Welcome back to the Sweat, and hello to the first time to our NBA panel. DraftKings contributors Matt Meiselman, Garion, Thorne, and Rotowire's Nick Whalen. Fellas, NBA building blocks time. Need your best DFS plays to build around for tonight's 6-game NBA slate, because we don't know what to do here. So who are you building around at center, Matt?
I'm going to start with Karl-Anthony Towns. I think this slate overall is a little complicated at the moment. We have a ton of players currently listed questionable or game time decision with Trae Young, but the one team that we have some clarity on is Minnesota, where a couple guys in the backcourt are questionable, but for the most part, the main players on this team, we know they're going to be out there. And this is just a really, really good matchup for the Minnesota Timberwolves in Detroit against a Pistons team that doesn't defend especially well and doesn't really have the size to compete with Towns. So I just really like Towns in general. I think that more people will play Anthony Davis tonight. And for that reason, too, I think Towns makes for a really good tournament play.
All right, Garion, what's your strategy at center?
Yeah, I'm going to go down a little bit farther and sort of echo something that Matt was talking about, which is that you kind of have to take sure things at this point. And while the Heat might have the most question marks of any team currently, right now they have 4 rotation players, including Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry, listed as questionable tonight. Bam Adebayo is not listed as questionable, and he is coming off arguably his best game of the season. He had a massive double-double on Tuesday against the Raptors that included 32 points, a season high. 32 points, and this matchup really couldn't be better against the Spurs, considering both of their centers are in the concussion protocol currently. The most important of those two obviously being Jakob Poeltl. There are maybe some ways that San Antonio can get creative with their center rotation. We'll get into that in a little bit, but right now this is going to be an undersized interior for the Spurs, and I just think Bam Adebayo, particularly if Butler's out and Kyle Lowry plays, I think that is like the ideal situation for Bam Adebayo. And $8,400 is a pretty reasonable salary, so I think it's a nice starting.
All right, Nick, do you feel like you got to go with a sure thing at center here?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a few guys at the top, and if you don't go with one of those guys, all of a sudden you find yourself in like the 5,000 or 6,000 range, and you're far away from a sure thing at that point. So Karl-Anthony Towns is kind of where I start as well. He's at 10,000. Detroit, of course, a bottom 5 defense over the last 10 games. They're a team that we've really been talking about targeting all season. It's a pace-up game for Detroit, a team that typically plays relatively slowly. Minnesota, number 1 in pace over the last 10 games. Towns leads all players on this slate in fantasy points per minute over his last 10. So there's a lot of reasons, I think, to shade your lineups toward Karl-Anthony Towns tonight. I think I'd stay away from Anthony Davis on the back-to-back. He looked great last night. Of course, got to give him credit. But he's had the wrist thing. He's Anthony Davis. He's always seemingly banged up. Second game of a back-to-back scares me a little bit. So I think I'm going to back off of Davis. But I like the Adebayo call as well. 8,400, I think, is a really good price. He also is coming off of one of his better games, not just since he's returned, but one of his better games of the season. And like Garion said, I mean, we're to the point that we could very well see, and most likely will see, Drew Eubanks starting at center for the Spurs, which I'm gonna take Adebayo on that side of the matchup.